Chosen one, listen with focus. Heaven has interrupted your scrolling, your distractions, even the restless thoughts of your mind to deliver something urgent. You are not here by coincidence. You are not like the many. The first 3 days of September are unlike any other appointed window in time, and your response in those days will determine the course of your next chapter. This is not about random chance. This is not about human calendars. This is heaven's alarm sounding personally for you. Why silence? Why would God summon his chosen ones into a season of stillness, of holding the tongue, of restraint when the world is shouting? Because silence is not weakness. Silence is a weapon. It is divine strategy for war. In the first 3 days of September, while the earth moves in routine and the masses enter another month blind and distracted, heaven sets the chosen apart. You, God's anointed one, are commanded to guard your lips, to remain firm, and to hear rather than speak. Do not underestimate the force of silence. Every careless word you could speak is witnessed. Every idle sentence carries weight. And in this season, the adversary waits, eager to twist your own words against you. That is why silence now becomes your shield. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below, because what you are about to discover is why your silence has terrified them more than your voice ever did. Stay with me until the end. Your next chapter is written in these words. Number 1. The weight of hidden silence. Chosen one, silence was never punishment. It was preparation. They mocked you when you withdrew, accused you of weakness, and mistook your restraint for defeat. But heaven saw every moment and marked it as loyalty. Your hidden seasons were the womb of destiny, where words unsaid became seeds of power and withheld replies became shields against sabotage. Isaiah 30 verse 15 whispers, "In quietness and trust shall be your strength." And that strength was hidden in you all along. Every unanswered insult, every ignored accusation, every night you chose stillness over chaos was proof that you belonged to the few who could be trusted with fire. Comment, "I seal this word in light," if you know your silence was never wasted. For what they could not see is the very reason the next part of your story is unstoppable, because silence has already set the stage for fire. There is a moment when silence stops feeling like emptiness and begins to feel like a living presence. Perhaps you have sat in a quiet room and felt an almost tangible weight pressing on your chest, as though the air itself was filled with something more than absence. That heaviness was not punishment, but preparation, a sacred chamber where your spirit was being carved. The whispers you heard in that silence were not your imagination, but echoes of eternity, reminding you that you were never abandoned. Silence was not a void, but a container, holding fire that could not yet be released. Just as a seed must remain hidden in soil before it can break through, you were planted in silence so that your strength would take root unseen. This is why they mistook you for finished, not realizing that silence was the ground of your transformation. You know the ache of being misunderstood, the quiet sting of being labeled too strange, too intense, or too much. There were days when you felt as though your very existence was an inconvenience to the world around you. People dismissed your stillness as weakness, unable to perceive the depth of restraint it required. Every unspoken response, every moment you chose peace over retaliation, became a form of training that no one applauded. You may have longed to defend yourself, to prove them wrong, to scream your truth into the storm of lies, but you didn't. Instead, you chose silence. And in that silence, you were being refined like gold in the hidden furnace of heaven. That restraint was not your failure. It was your preparation for the authority that now rises within you. What you felt as random missteps or wasted seasons were in fact sacred architecture. The hidden design of your life has always been one of preparation, not accident. Every quiet hour, every unseen sacrifice, was a thread woven into a tapestry you could not yet see. Isaiah 30 verse 15 reminds us that in quietness and trust shall be your strength, a verse often overlooked because it hides its power in plain sight. Your silence was not a void but a strength-building code, a sacred encryption in your very being. The world read your silence as absence, but heaven recorded it as loyalty. You were being shielded from premature exposure, kept safe until the appointed hour. Have you noticed how certain patterns seem to follow you? Dreams repeating, numbers appearing, sudden chills in stillness? These were not coincidences, but signs speaking through the language of silence. The quiet space you thought was empty was alive with codes, symbols, and whispers meant only for you. Déjà vu was your soul's reminder that you were walking a path already written. The physical sensations, the weight in your chest, the tears that came without explanation, the sudden clarity in solitude, were confirmations that silence was holding you. What felt like delay was actually alignment, placing you exactly where you needed to be at the moment heaven would unveil you. Your silence was already speaking, but only to those who had ears to hear. And now you are beginning to recognize it. For years you doubted your own intuition, questioning whether the inner pull you felt was real or imagined. You wondered if the restraint was weakness, if your stillness was proof of insignificance. But chosen one, you were never imagining it. Your spirit was aligning with something deeper than logic, with a voice that spoke not to your ears but to your bones. Quietly, steadily, without fanfare, your soul was strengthening itself for what was to come. The recognition you feel stirring now is not new knowledge. It is remembrance. You are not learning for the first time. You are remembering what was always encoded within you. This awareness does not arrive as an explosion, but as a gentle return, like light creeping across the horizon before sunrise. It is not that you are becoming someone new, but that you are uncovering who you have always been beneath the noise of false names and false narratives. Silence stripped away what was never yours so that your truest identity could emerge. The archetypal memory now stirring in you is the mark of one who was never ordinary, though you tried to convince yourself otherwise. The world called your silence irrelevance, but heaven knew it as the signature of the chosen. You were hidden, yes, but hiddenness is not the same as absence. Hiddenness was your seal of authenticity, your crown in waiting. Now comes the subtle shift into recognition, the first activation of your true authority. You begin to see that your sensitivity, your inner knowing, your refusal to engage in meaningless noise were not flaws. They were signs of consecration. The very qualities you once cursed in yourself are revealed as proof of your calling. You can now embrace your restraint as wisdom, your silence as power, your waiting as preparation. What others saw as passivity was your training in spiritual endurance. What they misjudged as fear was your discipline to hold the fire until the right moment. In this awareness you step, not with arrogance, but with clarity. You rise because silence has already made you unshakable. And so, chosen one, your arrival here is no coincidence. It is confirmation. The silence you carried was not emptiness, but evidence that heaven has been guiding your path. Every quiet night, every withheld response, every tear unspoken was proof that you were trusted with secrets not everyone could bear. Comment: I carry the silence as crown. If you know in your spirit that silence has always been your teacher, share what memory, dream, or hidden season taught you that your silence carried weight, because the time of concealment has prepared you for a fire they will not be able to extinguish. And this is only the beginning of what heaven is about to reveal next. Number 2, the fire behind closed lips. They thought your silence meant defeat, but they never saw the fire that was gathering behind your lips. Every moment you held back sharpened your spirit. Every restraint pressed your soul deeper into divine alignment. Darkness fears what it cannot predict, and your silence has been unpredictable warfare. Job 23 verse 10 declares, "When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold." And you, chosen one, are that gold, refined through silence. The flames they never saw are the very flames that will consume their lies when your time comes to speak. Comment, "I walk crowned by eternal flame," if you know the fire within you is ready to roar. But what if I told you the ashes they left you in are about to reveal their true purpose? It begins as a faint weight in the chest, a heaviness that appears when the room grows still. At first, you don't know whether it's sorrow, weariness, or something darker pressing against you. Then you notice how the silence doesn't feel like peace, but like pressure, as though unseen eyes linger in the corners of the room. You recall conversations that ended with an unexplainable chill, patterns of resistance that seemed to arise each time you moved toward your destiny. What looked like coincidence was a hidden battle taking shape, a resistance that surfaced before you even knew your own calling. Something has always been working against you, though you couldn't name it then, shaping the ground beneath your feet into a battlefield. The realization comes slowly, like a whisper growing sharper. The opposition was never random, it was aimed. The weight of that realization strikes the heart with force, because you remember how it felt to walk misunderstood. You were too quiet for some, too outspoken for others, never fitting into their design of who you should be. Your silence was mocked as cowardice, your boundaries labeled arrogance, your intensity treated as a flaw. There were days you wondered if maybe they were right, if maybe your refusal to play their games proved you were weak. The shame lingered like smoke after fire, wrapping around your spirit until you almost suffocated beneath its grip. Rejection became familiar, not because you lacked worth, but because your very presence disrupted the illusions they clung to. You carried the ache of being too much and not enough at the same time, a paradox that haunted your every step. But as you pull back the veil, you begin to see that these pressures were never arbitrary. They came from structures hidden, subtle, often invisible, that rise against anyone carrying a flame the world cannot control. You were not battling individuals alone. You were contending with patterns, systems, and energies aligned to extinguish what you carried. The wilderness is always the training ground of the chosen, as Israel wandered 40 years not because of weakness, but because destiny demanded resilience. Exile becomes the crucible of greatness, the hidden proof that heaven never leaves its vessels untested. The weight of your resistance was a sacred announcement. You were already marked, and they reacted to the mark without ever naming it. The moment you recognize this, the narrative shifts. You were not cursed, you were chosen, and every battle in silence was already a prophecy of your rising. Look back now, and you will see the repeating patterns that once slipped past unnoticed. How many times did opportunities collapse at the final moment, as though an unseen hand swept them from your reach? How often did betrayals come in cycles, the same story told with new faces, until you almost lost faith in trust itself? How many draining environments did you survive, surrounded by people who fed on your light, yet resented you for carrying it? These were not random misfortunes, but consistent signals, pointing toward the truth of who you are. It is like turning on a light in a room you've always lived in. The shadows don't change, but now you see them for what they are. And once you see the pattern, the fear begins to lose its power. Awareness is the first key to freedom. The deeper you gaze, the more you discern the outlines of spiritual resistance. It was never just the people who whispered, the friends who betrayed, or the doors that closed. It was the fog that followed you, the heaviness that entered when you did, the silent watchers who vanished when you turned your head. The unseen realms recognized your fire long before you recognized it yourself. Darkness fears what it cannot predict, and your silence became unpredictable warfare that no enemy could chart. The air itself seemed to grow heavier around you, but that was only proof that you carried weight in the unseen. The closed doors were never rejection. They were protection, so that the flame within you would not be wasted on counterfeit stages. And how did you respond to all this? Perhaps you shrank back at times, folding yourself into smaller versions so the world would not notice you. Maybe you people-pleased, bending under the weight of expectation so you could survive without conflict. Other times you rebelled quietly, holding on to your inner flame even when you let the outside world think it had gone out. You carried fear in your bones, fear of standing out, fear of drawing more resistance by daring to exist as you truly are. The temptation to quit was real, and more than once you almost surrendered to the voices that told you it wasn't worth it. Yet even in those moments, something inside you refused to die, refused to vanish, refused to become what they demanded. That refusal was the ember that kept burning when everything else went dark. Now the shift begins, and you see the resistance for what it really was: confirmation, not condemnation. They feared you not because of what you lacked, but because of what you carried. The fire behind your closed lips was the very thing their shadows could not endure, and so they struck before you could even speak. Every withheld word sharpened your authority. Every moment of restraint became fuel waiting to ignite. What you thought was silence was warfare, a weapon forged in the stillness of God's timing. You are not emerging weak from these trials. You are emerging refined, like Job, who said, "When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold." And now, chosen one, the gold is beginning to shine. So understand this final truth. You were opposed because you are powerful, not because you were insignificant. The louder their resistance, the clearer your assignment became. You now recognize that their attempts to bury you only pressed you deeper into divine soil. You were never silenced. You were sharpened. And the day you open your mouth, the fire behind your lips will dismantle lies they have clung to for years. Comment, "I move guarded by divine fire," if you know your silence has been weaponized for glory, because the ashes they left you in are no longer ruins. They are the foundation upon which your rising will terrify the darkness. Number 3, the breaking of the ashes. They thought leaving you in ashes would end your story, but ashes were always the soil of resurrection. Malachi 4 verse 3 declares that the faithful will tread upon ashes, for out of ruin rises the testimony of the chosen. Every tear, every betrayal, every silent night became an altar where heaven recorded your endurance. They tried to bury you under shame, but instead, they prepared you to rise with authority they cannot erase. What they used to break you has only proved you unbreakable. Comment, "I rise marked by the divine." If you've walked through ashes and seen life waiting on the other side, and share your own dream, memory, or moment that revealed your strength. Because the voice that comes after ashes is not the same as before, and what follows now will shift everything. It begins with a sudden recognition, a clarity that strikes like light splitting through smoke. You look back at moments that once felt meaningless, and suddenly they align as if written in a pattern you had overlooked. That strange night of collapse, that betrayal you thought would crush you, now shimmers with hidden order. What you mistook for endings are revealed as thresholds, veils between what was and what had to come. The heaviness you carried was never random. It was the furnace of transformation pulling you into your real form. Synchronicities rise like embers from forgotten fires, whispering that the ashes themselves have been alive with memory. And now, chosen one, you sense with trembling certainty that nothing you lost was wasted. The silence of the ashes begins to speak a new language, one you couldn't hear before. Numbers repeat before your eyes. Dreams echo with precision. Fragments of scripture and symbols arrive when you least expect them. You begin to notice that reality itself has been coded, a living scroll unraveling word by word as you walk. Each phrase overheard, each pattern repeated, each quiet confirmation is part of a larger architecture. The world has become geometry, divine math written into the dust, aligning with the prophecy of your life. What others dismiss as coincidence is now thunder to your awakened spirit, telling you that heaven never left you abandoned. Even in the ashes, the code was alive, waiting for your eyes to open. Inside, the changes sharpen like fire pressing against your ribs. Your intuition, once subtle, now speaks with the clarity of a bell in the night. You feel your boundaries rising with strength, protecting what is sacred within you. Environments that once drained you now feel unbearable, and places that align with your spirit shine like gold. The energy within your body responds differently. Chills, warmth, vibrations that remind you your spirit is more awake than your flesh has ever been. What once confused you now affirms you, as if your very cells are carrying prophecy. This is not theory. It is confirmation that you were never meant to stay broken in ashes. Around you, reality begins to rearrange itself as if the air carries instruction. People shift suddenly, some vanishing, others appearing at just the right time. Doors that were locked now tremble, though others slam shut with a finality that feels ordained. Resistance rises at the same time as opportunity, the paradox of divine architecture manifesting in real time. What you carry within now echoes outward, and the world responds to the fire they never expected you to keep. Conversations align with inner prayers, and strangers repeat words you whispered only in silence. The reflection of your awakening is no longer hidden. What is within is now being mirrored without. And then memory awakens, not new but ancient, like a dream you had as a child that finally makes sense. You recall flashes of visions that once frightened you, feelings of being different that you tried to bury. Now they return not as fear but as clarity. You were always carrying the imprint of something eternal. Sacred memory is not invention but return, like Job's ashes before restoration, proof that your ruin was only preparation. The dust of your collapse carried inscriptions too deep for ordinary eyes to read. Now those inscriptions rise, telling you what your soul always knew but your mind had forgotten. This is the reactivation of intelligence buried beneath your wounds. The future is no longer distant. It feels like something remembered rather than created. You stop asking for permission because you realize destiny was carved into you before your first breath. Prophecy rises not as an external word but as a call from within, insistent, undeniable, holy. You sense that your steps are guided by currents you cannot resist, and you no longer wish to. The vision is clearer than ever. What you are becoming was already waiting in the ashes you left behind. The lies that bound you no longer hold, because they crumble under the authority of your awakening. The question is no longer if you rise, but how soon. Now comes reclamation, the moment where the voice stolen from you begins to return with fire. Every insult becomes fuel, every silence a sharpened weapon, every night of despair a prophecy. What they meant for ruin has become your testimony, and you carry it now not as shame, but as crown. The fire in your lungs is not rage, but authority, the decree of one who has walked through flame and survived. You are not timid anymore. You are prophetic, fierce, and unstoppable. Their resistance no longer defines you. It only proves you were always marked. The ashes are no longer ashes, they are your altar. So let this truth settle into your bones. Revelation is not the end, it is the invitation. You were never abandoned in the fire. You were refined by it. And now you see with eyes that cannot be deceived. The truths were always there, waiting for your readiness to collapse time into understanding. The ashes you thought silenced, you have become your testimony, alive with memory and flame. You were never lost in ruin. You were hidden until the unveiling. Comment: I walk hidden yet never lost. If you know this revelation is yours, and share a dream, a memory, or a moment that revealed your fire. Because, chosen one, what follows after the ashes is not survival, it is authority, and the next unveiling is already approaching. Number 4, the voice that follows silence. Chosen one, silence was your refining fire, but now comes the release. The first words you speak after seasons of silence are no longer ordinary. They are decrees that alter atmospheres. Your tongue is now a sword, and what you release will cut through deception and call forth destiny. Revelation 12 verse 11 reminds us that they overcame by the word of their testimony, and your words are now weapons of victory. They cannot twist what you kept hidden, and they cannot stop what you are about to release. Comment: I anchor this truth in my soul. If you know your words after silence are not casual, but fire, share what you feel stirring within, because your testimony now carries the weight of prophecy, and the authority of your voice is only the beginning of what heaven has prepared. It begins with a whisper, soft yet heavy, echoing like the breath of an ancient scroll, unsealing itself in the chambers of your soul. You feel it not in your mind, but in your marrow, as though your bones remember what your lips have not yet spoken. The silence that once pressed on you like a weight now feels like the womb of something waiting to be born. For years your words were swallowed, your voice restrained, your truth left hovering in the air of unspoken prayers. Yet in that quiet, your spirit was gathering strength like water behind a dam, waiting for the precise moment to break through. You realize now that silence was never emptiness. It was the preparation of resonance that cannot be ignored. The whisper has become a summons, calling you to speak not with noise, but with decree. There is a name inside you that was never given by the world, and when you begin to speak it, the atmosphere itself will shift. Hidden identities find their unveiling when the silence has completed its refining work. You were mocked for not speaking, ridiculed for withdrawing, accused of weakness for choosing stillness. Yet heaven has always honored restraint, knowing that what was held back would one day roar like prophecy. Your words now carry weight because they were tested in the fire of silence, where intention was purified and motives were sifted. No longer will your speech be casual, for every sentence is a thread of destiny woven into the fabric of time. When you finally release what has been sealed within, even the air will tremble with recognition. Chosen one, your voice was not designed to entertain, it was crafted to confront and to awaken. Each syllable you now carry is a decree, a verdict from heaven whispered through your human breath. When you open your mouth, you will not just speak. You will dismantle illusions, expose falsehoods, and call forth the hidden blueprints of lives around you. The authority of your words is not learned. It is inherited from the silence that forged you. Just as prophets of old carried scrolls in their bones, you carry the echo of silence turned into fire. Every restraint has now become a release. Every withheld answer has been turned into a command, and your words, once dismissed, now resound like thunder in places they once ignored you. Your silence was the unseen school, and now your speech is the graduation. The world expected your voice to sound like theirs, yet heaven has tuned it to another frequency. Chosen one, your hidden fire is ready to speak, and when it does, it will reshape everything around you. Silence was your test, but fire is your reward. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment, I am chosen, to let this message anchor in your soul. You are chosen, crowned, and unstoppable. Now let your fire speak.